Hello, everyone. We are here with Isabela Christo, who is talking to us from beautiful Buenos Aires, and we are going to talk today about her paper on the journal Special Jurisdictions about Chinese finance SECs in Brazil. How are you, Isabela?
I'm doing well, Natalie. Thank you again for the invitation. It's always a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. It's a very nice pleasure to be talking about SECs with a woman, to be honest. It's a nice change.
That's true. That's true. We need
Yeah.
more women talking about.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that you are here. And I'm very excited about, well, having the opportunity to talk about your paper. I read it almost a year and a half ago, maybe even more. 2020, maybe. I don't know, long time ago.
Yeah, I think it was last year that was officially published.
Yes, exactly. So, Pouso Alegre, that's the city where the SEC that you talked about in your paper, well, that's the name. So tell us a
Yeah.
bit about your paper, the city, and then we go from there.
Okay, so a little background. Everyone asked me about why the city, and that was the question that I had in China too. I did my master's degree in China, and as we know, China, it was the pioneer country to work with special development zones. And in this case, we are I was living in China and having the experience with the Chinese culture and also understanding a little bit more about how it works, being inserted in this culture. And I did a trip for Xiamen, where they have a special economic zone. One of the first were in Xiamen. And when I saw that, we enter the area, and I was like, this is so amazing. During my college in Brazil, I had teachers that they explained to me. We study a little bit, but also like in a very, how can I say, from the papers, like from the books.
Yeah.
When you see in person, it's something that you cannot forget. And also talking with people in there, from the Chinese government and from companies. Of course, they have a few topics from the Chinese government that is different from what we're aiming for. But in the same way, it was amazing to see all that development and how the economy there was flourishing. So I came back to my university in Beijing, in Tsinghua University, and I was sure that I wanted to do something in that sense in Brazil. So I started looking for information and also researching. Um, and this paper was actually one part of my thesis, my master thesis in China. And I got a Chinese professor to be my mentor. And when I showed him like I want to do this in Brazil, and he was like, "Great, so you're gonna do in Rio?" And I was like, "No."
Oh,
I was like, "No, I want to do in my state. I want to do
yeah.
a project for my state, Pouso Alegre. It's in South Minas Gerais, which is my state, and I wanted and my state, it's an inland state, so we don't have a direct exit to the ocean. And my my professor, my Chinese professor, he said, "You're crazy. How can we do that? Like you need the
Oh.
exit." And I convinced him with a lot of research that was a good idea and we could make it work. So that's how we came with Pouso Alegre, because the
Okay.
Chinese companies already investing there. So we came from this perspective, and also it's very well connected in Brazil, like with the big cities in south of Brazil, like São Paulo and southeast, Rio and Brasilia. So it was like a good location in that sense. So that was the why Pouso Alegre.
Okay. I relate a lot to what you just said about, oh, are you gonna do it in Rio? Because I'm from Colombia, so we are neighbors. And when I say I'm from Colombia, and it's happened several times, more than I can count, they ask me, Oh, cool. Bogotá or Medellin?
Exactly.
There's there's so many cities in Colombia. Why? Why it's not just two. I'm actually from a city called Barranquilla, a
Ah,
nice sport city, by the way, from where Shakira is.
yeah, I know. I was about to say that, but
That's the second thing they say. Oh, Barranquilla. Okay, Shakira is. No, actually, most people don't know it, but I'm glad you do. And so, where are you in Buenos Aires right now, by the way?
I'm in Buenos Aires right now. I work remotely, so I've been traveling around South America the last few months.
Nice.
And Buenos Aires, I have part of my team here. The biggest part is here, so it was a good way to be in person also at the office and everything.
Nice. And since we're talking about, well, Chinese finance projects, or that's what we're going to talk about, in terms of the economy or the how is dollar to Argentinian pesos right now? Like, are you? I guess it's a
Yeah.
convenient time to be there, no?
It is. It is. I think Argentina. It's an amazing country in so many ways. The cultural part, like they have a very strong cultural agenda, which from us in Latin America, that's something that we they have already that. So uh, it's a beautiful country.
Yeah.
I got to know more. I've been to Buenos Aires before, but last week I was in North Argentina, almost Paraguay, in Chaco, El Chaco Impenetrable.
Okay.
And it's another Argentina. Like in Brazil, you have many
Yeah.
Brazil in one Brazil, like many Chinas in one China.
Yeah.
Right now, the economic situation here, it's difficult with inflation, like especially with the dollar rates. They have the official one from the government. They have the dollar blue that you can exchange on the street. Now, they also a few weeks ago they have like the Coldplay dollar because of the Coldplay concerts they're gonna have here. So it's they're having like a dollar rate just for the Coldplay tickets.
Wow.
And but, but like Argentina right now, um, it's unstable in that sense economically. Politically, I don't know that much to be honest. Like I understand there is the Kirchneristas and everything, but they're in a very delicate moment as a country and like for the next steps. But I think in the whole Latin America we are like that. In
Yeah.
Brazil too, we have elections in 2 weeks. Like it's been after pandemic, like that after pandemic, it's been difficult for Latin America in general.
Yeah. In Colombia this week is the highest that the dollar to peso to Colombian peso has ever, ever, ever been. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. But like I always say, Latin America, we are kind of used to that. If you explain that to
Yeah.
other like people from other countries, they'll be like, ah, that's crazy. But you come to Argentina and they're living the same way, of course, like with more like things are difficult, but in the same way, we are very resilient
Yeah.
like people.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah. It's like if you come from Latin America, go to the UK, people love to queue when you're like, why do you love to queue so much? So it's just, yeah, part of, it's normal, culturally normal. And do you see any sorts of, have you heard now that you are there about any Chinese finance big infrastructure projects or SEC projects?
In Argentina,
Yeah.
mm, to be honest, no, but I haven't been looking for, but I'm pretty sure they are investing here because the Chinese business, they always invest in the country who is unstable. Different from other investors around the world, they want something that is safe. Chinese, they usually, in general, they want to get in a play like they see as opportunity, that which is very unique.
Yeah, that's a very nice, well, not nice, but that's a very realistic way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah.
true. Yeah, that is true. So before you wrote the paper about, and I think you alluded to this already, before you wrote the paper about a Chinese finance SEC in Pouso Alegre, there was already a lot of Chinese finance projects there were, or yeah?
Yes,
So
yes,
tell
yes.
us a bit about that panorama in Pouso Alegre, Chinese financing.
Um, China has been investing a lot in Minas Gerais state in general.
Okay.
For example, Minas Gerais in Portuguese means general mines, so we have a lot of minerals in the state. Yeah, so
Oh,
many different types of minerals, and the Chinese government and companies, they are very interested in investing in that. So China is the biggest business partner of Minas Gerais.
okay. Yes, I remember that from your paper. Yeah.
So it is part like of and they want to be investing more in Minas Gerais in general. I work at the state government for a few years in Minas Gerais after for 1 year and a half after my master's, and I was in contact especially with the development area and the Chinese companies, even during the pandemic, because I was working during the pandemic. They were very interested in investing in the state and also trying to find new ways to invest, not only the import minerals to China, but also solar panels in north of Minas Gerais, for example. Um, it's a it's a big market for solar panels. We don't
Okay.
use it that much in Brazil, and China is is a big producer. So that's another thing that they are trying to invest a lot. Now for the case of Pouso Alegre, they in Pouso Alegre there is one company that is XCMG, and that is a Chinese company that is very important in China. It's for example, in Brazil we have Petrobras that everyone knows in Brazil.
I know
This,
it.
yeah, it's almost the same for a Chinese citizen. You say this company XCMG, and I know, everyone knows. So it's a very important company in China, and they were investing already in Pouso Alegre, of course, before my paper. For a long time, they have money they have a company there, and it's been there for I don't remember how many years, but it's been there already for a long time, and it's been working a lot. And when I saw that, I thought, okay, if the Chinese they chose this place, because they could have been like in São Paulo, in Rio, like everyone thinks that we are supposed to be doing there. And they decided to do Pouso Alegre, which back there was a very small city. Now it's bigger, and the structure is much better.
Okay.
But they did the research years ago, and they saw that like logistically, that was the best place to start the company. And
Okay.
the land was cheaper, the infrastructure could get better, but now it's much better. So they like I said, Chinese people in general, Chinese companies, they have a long-term vision that sometimes in Latin America is very difficult because they to see it in that way. So they saw in the long term, they saw, okay, this place, the land is cheap, they have workers, we can start from here, and it's very well connected, because Brazil can get difficult to connect depending where you are. So that's why they chose Porto Alegre, and that from there I thought, okay, so that could be a great place to start to get more investment for Minas Gerais from China.
That makes sense. And this XCMG,
Yeah.
how are they involved? Is it, apologize for my pronunciation. No.
No problem.
Okay, how do you pronounce it?
XCMG, no?
But the like the Z Zuzu.
The XCMG.
Wait, I have the name. Susu Construction Machinery Group. Susu. It's Susu, no?
So yeah.
Susu.
It's
Okay,
part.
Susu.
It's part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So how are they connected to the industrial park that you were talking about?
They already have one industrial park set up in the city,
Oh,
just for them. That would be the idea. They are only for XCMG. It's a very
okay.
specific way of industrial park that it's that they created. But the idea would be to grow this industrial park and the tax exceptions to other companies because they don't work by themselves. They need other materials even for their manufacture. So the idea would be starting from there, as we already have
Okay.
this industrial park by law in Brazil. It won't be that complicated because my first idea was to create a special economic zone. Of course, like everyone, that was my big dream. But when writing the thesis and researching, for it was very complicated to do that. It is very complicated to take this step in Brazil because it's not only about the public policy, but also about a lot of politics in Brazil because you need to change in the federal level to get the exceptions, the tax exceptions, and
So,
to create.
so when you said that this XCMG Industrial Park is already created by law, what do you mean?
It's that in that sense, if you want to create an industrial park in Brazil nowadays, you don't have to ask um, for the federal government. You have to explain why you are doing that, but it's already in the law in Brazil, so you don't have to change any laws for
Oh,
that.
okay, got it. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you apply with the specific zone agency or
Yes.
what? Okay, cool. Got it.
Yes.
Okay.
And the idea was to grow from there. Like I said, the big dream was to create a special the economic zone. Um, but nowadays, like given the Brazilian rules and laws, that would take wouldn't be in the short term very feasible. So
Okay.
that's why I wanted to do something that was more than just theoretical. I want to do something that was actually a plan that someone could get that from the government and say, okay, let's do this and we can get more investment. Because I don't know, that was something that when I was writing my master thesis, I said, okay, I don't want to do something that is just theoretical. I worked a lot with research in the academic sphere, and I really miss the part that you actually can make it work in real life, in public policy, and talking with different stakeholders. So that was the approach for this paper.
Okay. And did you have any contact with the company while you were writing the paper? Were you ever able to reach them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, a few times, a few people in XCMG in Pouso Alegre. It was very interesting to talk with Brazilians who have been working there for a long time because they said that many people in the city, as it was not a big city back there, and it's still a medium-sized city, and work for this company.
Okay.
And it became a Chinese cultural city in some way because also they brought a lot of Chinese people to Pouso Alegre to start. So they said that it's like it used to have like, I don't know how many Chinese people in this small city, and after the company now they are inserting in the culture of the city. So it was very interesting to talk. And also,
Interesting.
yeah, and also Chinese people have been living there for years and they love it. They say that it's a great city and everyone is very open. So it's interesting to see how this this
Interesting.
change. It goes beyond the economic part, goes to the cultural part, and also how can you insert to that. And Latin America, we are very good in that also in embrace different cultures.
Yeah,
So it's one less obstacle for different industries from different
yeah,
countries to come and be here.
that is true. That is true. And for example, in Colombia, is certainly the case, but not so much with respect to China, although I don't think that the general population actually thinks about it. Maybe because they're really not aware of who finances sports, for example, or who manages them or who delegates who manages them. So, and what is the opinion of outside Brazilians about the Chinese finance SEC? Is it same as the ones that are there, or they don't know, or it's different?
You mean for Brazilians or outside of Brazil? Other
Outside of Pouso Alegre.
outside. It is you can get mixed perspectives,
Okay.
especially now that politics is so polarized
Mm,
in Brazil. um, I think, how can I say, during the pandemic, uh, it it was very interesting to see how this perspective changed, because at first it was like, and let's not accept Chinese products in Brazil and everything. And then,
everything is
yeah, like I think the whole country was like,
everything
the
is
whole
from
world was
China.
like that. Yeah, like no Chinese and everything. But then everyone saw, and I think there was a movement in Brazil to say how important is China for the Brazilian economy, how like they're the biggest business
Oh,
partner as well of China, of Brazil.
wow.
We import more and export more for China. And so it
Okay.
was a wake up call for Brazilians in general that, okay, we are very dependent on them economically saying. So I think nowadays it's very, and also you can see like in very different cities around Brazil, Chinese companies, they're investing a lot. And you see,
Okay.
for example, Pouso Alegre. It was a medium regular city in Minas Gerais state, and after the Chinese came, it became much more richer. In like
Okay.
the city, it was flourishing. The economic development, the infrastructure was clear because the Chinese company was investing a lot in the infrastructure for them, and the population saw that clearly. So I think during the pandemic, we saw a very, how can I say, a tendency of saying no to China. But then after a few months, and Brazilians saw that, okay, no, we really need them. So
Interesting.
I don't think like it's right now in Brazil as it is in other countries saying the idea of no Chinese investment. I think in Brazil it's very open in general.
Cool. And in terms of the cultural mixture, can you talk a bit about how the cultures have merged a bit? Maybe food. Food also. Oh, that must be a nice combination, actually.
That's a great question. In Pouso Alegre, I heard that they, from what I heard from people that are there and work at this Chinese company, they told me that many products that at first were never imagined to have there, now they have because of the Chinese population who had to move there because of because of work. And they said that you go to downtown and you can find a small store, like a Chinese store, that
Nice.
they only speak Chinese among them. Only Chinese people go there,
Oh, the
and
food.
it is very interesting. Now about the food, that like personally, before when I went to China for the first time for my masters, it was my first time in Asia. So I just got there and I knew that I was spending the year studying. And in Brazil, we do have Chinese food, and I was expecting the same food.
Oh,
I was like was
yeah.
completely naive.
No. Yeah.
So I was
No.
expecting exactly the same food. And I order at home. I was like, Friday night Chinese food, great. I'm gonna have. So I was excited to get the same food, and then when I got there, I noticed that was completely different. Like
Yeah.
it's very mixed.
Yeah.
Like you get something from the Brazilian food, and then you mix the Chinese aspects. And was very the first few months I was looking for, okay, where is that food that I eat, that rice, the Chinese rice that I eat.
Yeah,
And
the Chinese rice with everything.
exactly, but
Yeah,
it's so
no.
different. And like the spices and the way, like it was so interesting that like I didn't because they sell in Brazil as Chinese food. That's
Yeah,
Chinese,
I agree.
but it's 100% adapt to the Brazilian taste.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, I guess that happens, no? Same with I lived in the UK and my favorite food in the entire world is UK Indian food. I would say Indian, but the same thing has happened. So I've never been to India yet.
Mhm.
So I really don't know what actual Indian food tastes like. Although this one, the one that I used to eat every day was cooked by an actual Indian housewife. That was her business. She cooked it in the house.
Uh,
But yeah, I guess it was maybe a bit adapted to the UK paladar.
yes,
Yeah, but
maybe.
well, oh, cool. And so you said that so okay, how in general, how is the SEC framework in Brazil? Like how far could you push this idea to make it into a really interesting, super well integrated next generation special economic zone?
That's a great question, Natalie. We've that's something that I've been very much interested. It's been for a few years, especially after China, and I was invited for a conference beginning of this year in Brasilia, in the capital, with the ENAP. ENAP is the National School for Public Policies. Escola Nacional, the Public Administration, sorry,
Okay. Oh,
because I was translating my head, is the National School for Public Administration, and they are working and advocating a lot for for getting better laws in the Congress, actual creating like a sustainable special economic zone uh,
okay.
in Brazil, and also in a way that it is easy for other states and other cities in Brazil can have this type of how can I say, freedom to create their own type of special zones. And it is very hard the way that it is set up right now in the Brazilian constitution. We only have one area that is in Manaus, the
Oh,
zone in Manaus,
nice.
and it's very specific. And for other cities that want to do the same, they need to get a lot of approvals from the federal government.
Okay.
And the sad part of that is that it's something that could be public policy that could be used um, broadly in Brazil to attract more investment, to create more jobs, is something that became very how can I say, very difficult to get the approvals and very political, because
Mm.
in the sense that you depend on the Congress to get that accepted. And also, even if you get, for example, in Minas Gerais, we have other cities that they have the authorization to create some types of special zones,
Okay.
not as broad as Manaus, but they do have, but they are all on paper, because once you're going to create, the bureaucracy, it's almost impossible to get through. And
Really?
especially now with the politics in Brazil, it's been so difficult to get attention, to get that accepted and approve it. We at this conference, it was more like a meeting we had, and we were discussing different topics. And one of them was special jurisdictions in Brazil, and how we can make that public policy, something that the Congress will be able to approve.
Yeah.
And we were with people from different sectors. I was there. We were creating during a whole day a workshop, creating a document that we could present to the Congress in some way that would make that more interesting and appealing for politicians. Because
Yeah.
if I send to them, for example, my paper, they are going to read, but they are not going to understand. You have to
Oh,
make more like 1, 2, 3 like bullet points, and that's what we did, and in a more political speech.
okay.
And we are few in Brazil advocating for that, but that's something that I really hope in the next, we have the presidential elections in 2 weeks in Brazil, and I think the
Okay.
first few years of a new president, a new Congress, and all that, it's easier to make this type of change. So I think the timing for next year might be the political sphere would be more open to these new ideas, hopefully.
Okay. And the special economic zone in Manaus, what benefits it has? Is it just taxes or it has other regulatory abilities on top of that? Can you tell us a bit about the Manaus zone?
Sure. To be honest, I don't know that much detail, but I know it was created many years ago. Has the tax exceptions for specific companies,
Okay.
and
Oh,
that they can
okay.
create. Yeah, they
Ah,
can get in, but it's also like I said, it's the process and the payment. And Manaus, I think the biggest problem with the Manaus zone is that Manaus it's not well connected to the rest of Brazil.
yeah, it's like very near the Amazon, no?
Yeah, it's in the middle. It's the
Yeah.
capital of the state of Amazonas, and also it's not well connected. Like it's north of Brazil,
Mm.
and it's closer to Colombia, I
Yeah.
believe, the rest of Brazil. So and to
But not
get
to
there,
sea,
sorry,
but not to the sea.
exactly, it's not close to the sea and the connection. So I think the price to get your company
Mm,
in that zone is so expensive.
yeah.
Like you can even get the tax exemptions, but when you put on paper, if it's actually like, because you're gonna have to send to the
Okay.
south of Brazil, to São Paulo, to north, east, everything, it's gonna be so expensive. So I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest problem, because special jurisdiction should be in the sense of a jurisdiction as Manaus, that it's for manufacture and creating,
Oh.
producing, should be more well connected in that sense.
Yeah. There should be nodes in a network as opposed to just, there should be hubs and not just isolated nodes. Okay. And what would be so we know about the advantages and the strengths of Pouso Alegre. What would be the weakness of establishing finding Chinese finance SEC in Pouso Alegre?
Hmm. I I believe would be the success that now the city has. The price of land is getting higher.
Oh,
So that's it's still cheaper than São Paulo, which is very close to Pouso Alegre. It's still cheaper, but in the same way, it's getting expensive. Um, Skilled workers also. That's something that you can train workers to work in something more that you require more skills. But
Yes.
in the same way, is not that easy to find. So sometimes you have
Okay.
to get people to move to Pouso Alegre. I think that's the second point.
Okay.
And yeah, I think those are basically the land price is growing and also the
Okay.
skilled worker, yeah, labor.
Okay. And what was the focus that you wanted this industrial park to have?
I would say that given the economy that we have in the south of Minas Gerais, which is where Pouso Alegre is located, I would say that you can make many things, many different markets, but I would believe um, that, for example, what like nanotechnology, you have you have another city that is Santa Rita do Sapucaí that it's close to it's yeah not close but it is already a place that people the Chinese companies are investing there in
Okay.
nanotechnology chips. Um, so in SIM cards, so it's I think could be something, and you don't need that much um, um, you don't need that much skilled workers to work in this area, and you can train them. So I think Pouso Alegre could be a good option for this market.
Cool. Okay. Okay. Awesome, Isabela. Well, thank you so much for sharing not only about your paper, but things around it that we don't get the opportunity to read in the paper, right? So thank you so much for being here. And everyone, if you haven't read Isabela's paper, we'll put the link here for you to read it.
Thank you so much, Natalie. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation and for the whole team. It's always a pleasure. And if you have any doubts, please feel free to contact me.
Here.
Thank you so much.